Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are jumping straight into a stack of sources that guide us toward this search for what's often called big magic.
Right.
That elusive, intimidating, but totally essential force of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission in this deep dive is to sort of extract the essential operating manual for a different kind of life, one that's driven by curiosity, persistence, and joy, not paralyzed by the vast, depressing weight of fear.
And that's the key, right? We're looking for the courage to bring the treasures hidden inside us out into the light.
That phrase, hidden treasures, is so important.
It's absolutely critical because our source material defines creativity not just as, an artistic thing, painting, writing, whatever, but as something much, much deeper.
Yeah.
It's the relationship between a human being and the mysteries of inspiration. So it positions the creative life as a partnership between your effort and this larger, often inexplicable force.
So this whole deep dive really revolves around one single powerful question.
Exactly. A question that's posed to every potential maker. Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden within you?
And we should be really clear when we say creative living. This isn't just for professional artists.
Oh, not at all. It's not about aiming for public accolades or anything like that.
It's for anyone who wants to move through the world in a specific way. I mean, it's about cultivating an existence that is, and I'm quoting here, amplified, bigger, happier, expanded, and a hell of a lot more interesting.
Simply because you are continually and stubbornly bringing forth those unique jewels inside you.
Right, whatever form they take. It could be a business plan, a perfect peach cobbler.
Or a complicated poem. It's a mindset. It's a daily practice, a true way of moving through the world.
So to really set the tone for the kind of commitment this life requires, we have to start with this exemplar of dedication, the poet Jack Gilbert. Now, he is not related to the author of our source material, but his life. It serves as this beautiful, radical illustration of the whole philosophy.
And his background is so unlikely. I mean, this is a man born in 1925, grew up literally sweating through his youth in the smoke and noise of Pittsburgh.
Working in factories and steel mills.
Exactly. An environment completely removed from the romantic image of the poet.
So how did he get into it?
He was called to poetry as a young man, but he treated it less like a career path and more like a devotional practice.
It's like an act of love.
A lifelong commitment to the search for grace and transcendence. It's almost like becoming a monk, but one dedicated to language. And this ascetic, focused approach informed his entire life, especially his relationship with fame.
And he certainly had the goods for fame.
Yeah.
I mean, his first collection, Views of Jeopardy, published way back in 1962.
It won the Yale Younger Poets Prize.
And was immediately nominated for the Pulitzer.
Right out of the gate. He was handsome, charismatic, passionate, the kind of writer who could just ignite a room. Vogue even photographed him.
Oh, I've seen that picture. He looks absolutely gorgeous, ready to be the literary darling of his generation.
He could have been that rock star poet, attending every party, giving endless lectures.
But that's where his philosophy took this really radical turn, the first major lesson for us.
Yes. He didn't avoid fame because he thought it was corrupting or morally bad. He found that the daily demands and the clamor of literary success were simply boring.
Boring, that's it?
That's it. He experienced it as the same noise, the same expectations, the same conversation every single day. He wanted something richer, more textured,
So he just left.
He simply and thoroughly disappeared. He dropped out of the literary world entirely.
And when you say disappeared, you mean disappeared for 20 years.
20 years. He left the U.S., went to Europe, and lived mostly in these highly isolated places. Famously, a small shepherd's hut on a mountaintop in Greece.
So he wasn't networking or marketing, he was just living.
Contemplating eternal mysteries, watching the light change, and writing his poems in private, often not showing them to anyone.
And his career had this incredible pattern, right?
This pattern of sacred isolation, these long periods of extreme privacy and concentration, followed by the sublime, unexpected publication of a new collection. And then, poof. He'd immediately retreat back into isolation.
What did he say about that? I mean, how that affected his career?
When asked later in life, he just laughed and said, "I suppose it's been fatal."
Oh.
But fatal to his career was, life-giving to his soul.
And the ultimate impact of his life, it seems, came from the few years he spent teaching toward the end at the University of Tennessee.
Yes. His students said he encouraged them to live creative lives not for publication, but a robust means of fighting back against the ruthless furnace of this world.
I love that phrase.
He emphasized the active, immediate joy of creation, what he called delight and stubborn gladness.
Stubborn gladness. Even when the world is painful, you stubbornly choose to create.
And the central defining lesson he left them was all about bravery. He told his students that without bravery, they would never realize the vaulting scope of their own capacities. Their lives, he insisted, would remain small.
Much smaller than what they wanted.
Far smaller than their own desires demanded. And this speaks directly to you, the learner. We so often shrink ourselves preemptively.
And it all comes down to that one question he asked a shy student. A question so powerful, it's really the backbone of this whole discussion.
Simple, yet terrifyingly direct.
Do you have the courage? Do you have the courage to bring forth this work? The treasures that are hidden inside you are hoping you will say yes.
That's the mission statement.
Okay, let's unpack this courage aspect, because that is the single hardest hurdle for most people. I mean, for me, for you, for everyone.
Absolutely.
What stands between us and saying yes to those treasures is a vast, depressing, and incredibly loud list of fears. It's what the sources call the scary, scary, scary section of our minds.
And it's a relentless bully. It truly is bottomless, and the fact that we can list it so exhaustively just shows how universal this creative paralysis is. The sources inventory, this whole list of invented terrors.
Like what's on the list?
Well, you're afraid you have no talent, or that you'll be rejected, criticized, ridiculed.
Or just plain ignored.
Exactly. And then the internal sabotage kicks in. You fear someone else already did it better, so why even bother?
Well, that's a big one. Or that your idea will be stolen if you share it.
Right. Or that your work isn't politically or emotionally important enough to justify the effort.
Yeah.
Or that your dreams themselves are just embarrassing.
Too frivolous, too ambitious. And I think the worst one, for me, is the fear that it'll just be a giant waste of time, effort, and money.
Leaving you with nothing but regret. And then there are the operational fears. Not having the right discipline, the perfect workspace, the financial freedom.
The formal training, the MFA.
All of it. And there's even this profound, almost mystical fear of unleashing your innermost demons. Or the opposite, the terror that your best work is already behind you.
So where does this intimate knowledge of fear come from in the source material?
It comes from a deep personal place. From growing up as a child who was terrified of nearly everything, the author calls herself Pitiful Pearl.
Pitiful Pearl.
A persona terrified not just of, the dark or heights, but of benign everyday things. Snow, the Muppets on Sesame Street, stairs, the telephone.
The telephone, wow.
Yeah.
And even sharp blades of grass.
Seemingly sharp blades of ordinary grass. Yes. And if left to her own devices, she would have spent her entire childhood indoors, safe and immobilized.
But her mother intervened.
Her mother, who she describes as a tough Scandinavian product, intervened. She was absolutely determined not to raise a candy ass, and her strategy was, well, it was radical exposure therapy.
And this is where the detail is so vital for you, the learner. It wasn't just get over it.
No, it was mandated action. Scared the vast cold ocean. You're not only getting in, you have to swim out past the first wave.
And you're afraid of the cold, heavy snow.
Here's a shovel. You're now officially responsible for clearing the driveway. Paralyzed with dread by the ringing telephone.
Yes.
You are now the official telephone answerer for the household.
And this forced confrontation was met with resistance.
Oh, years of deep resistance. She spent that time arguing fiercely for her limitations, trying to prove she was enfeebled, that she had genuine reasons to stop. And then came the crucial realization.
What was it?
She realized she was actively defending her weakness. As the source material says, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them.
But why would anyone want to keep a limitation?
Exactly. And the shift came from realizing the true, ugly nature of fear, that it is fundamentally, eternally boring.
Boring. That's a strange word for fear.
But it's perfect. Fear is the great artist of repetition. It has no variety, no depth, no texture. It never changes, never surprises. It's a song with one single repeated tedious word.
Stop P.
Stop P. And because it always says S-O-P, it always leads to the same outcome. Nothingness. It's the antithesis of the creative impulse, which is built on curiosity and motion.
And this connects to the bigger picture, to evolution.
Right. We're talking about a deeply ancient instinct, vital for the first 99% of human history, but it is not smart.
It's the panic reflex of our dumbest inner tadpole.
I love that. The primitive part of your brain that thinks every uncertain outcome is a saber-toothed tiger attack. So fear is not this original artisanal object. It's a mass-produced, generic survival instinct.
So building your identity around it means you're choosing the most boring, generic part of yourself.
Exactly. So the goal shifts. It's not about eliminating fear, which is impossible. It's about finding a way to coexist. It's about understanding that creativity is for the brave, not the fearless.
That distinction is so important.
It is. Fearlessness is for sociopaths or maybe 3-year-olds who haven't learned about gravity yet. We need fear for basic survival, to avoid walking into traffic, to assess real threats.
Like actual bears.
Like actual bears.
Yeah.
Or to evaluate serious emotional threats, like marrying someone who is clearly wrong for you. Fear serves a vital purpose in filtering true danger.
The problem, though, is that our fear instinct has zero nuance when it comes to creativity.
None. It assumes any uncertain outcome, sending out a manuscript, starting a business, is destined to end in a bloody, horrible death.
The analogy for this is just perfect.
Fear acts like a mall cop who has watched too many action movies and thinks he's a Navy SEAL.
Right. Hopped up on Red Bull, shooting at his own shadow.
In this absurd, hyper-dramatic effort to keep everyone safe, we have to manage this impulse, but trying to kill it. Well, you often end up killing the creative impulse, too.
So this is where it gets really practical. The strategy isn't elimination. It's a radical, comfortable coexistence.
Yes, you have to stop fighting fear and just make plenty of space for it. They are conjoined twins who share vital organs. Trying to kill fear often inadvertently murders creativity in the process.
The paradox is that the less you fight it, the less reason it has to fight back.
By embracing it, you start to neuter its power to stop you.
And this leads to the famous road trip analogy, which offers a practical, almost a replicable script for you, the learner.
Right. When you start a new project, you deliver a prepared, welcoming speech to fear.
What does that sound like?
It's something like this. Dearest Fear, creativity and I are about to go on a road trip together. I understand you'll be joining us because you always do.
So you acknowledge its existence right away. You disarm it.
Exactly. You even acknowledge its job-inducing complete panic and confirm that it does its job superbly.
But then comes the hard boundary, the power move.
The non-negotiable boundary. Fear is allowed a seat, and it's allowed a voice. It can scream and whine all it wants, but it is not allowed to have a vote.
And what does that mean in practice? What would it look like if fear got a vote?
Well, if fear had a vote, it would dictate that you immediately abort the project, or you take a detour straight back home where it's safe. If it touches the road maps, it will demand you only drive to the most boring, familiar places.
It would crank the AC until you're freezing and just want to stop the car.
Precisely. So you explicitly tell fear. You're not allowed to touch the road maps. You're not allowed to suggest detours. You're not allowed to fiddle with the stereo or the temperature controls.
You recognize its presence. You honor its protective instinct. But you absolutely deny it any agency over the journey.
And the payoff here is the core takeaway. Carrying your fear around with you is the only way you'll ever be able to go anywhere interesting. Life is short, it's rare, it's miraculous. We don't have time anymore to think so small as to let that dumb inner tadpole dictate our destiny.
You have to be brave enough to drive with the screaming passenger in the back seat.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the courage required from the human being. But what about the source of the inspiration itself? Is creativity just willpower and brain chemistry? Or is there something else at play?
This is where we get into the big magic side of things.
Right. The whole philosophy is built on this profound and maybe kind of outlandish belief that creativity is a force of enchantment, not entirely human in its origins.
And we mean that literally, in the sense that there is a mystical, energetic force moving through the world.
So what's the core theory of this enchantment?
The theory, which you can take as a helpful delusion if nothing else, posits that the planet is inhabited not just by biological entities, but by ideas. Ideas that are themselves alive, disembodied, and possess a consciousness.
And these ideas are just swirling around us.
Swirling around us, searching for available and willing human partners, whether those ideas are artistic, scientific, ethical, you name it.
That sounds wonderfully romantic, but for a practical-minded listener, isn't that just a permission slip for laziness? Like, just wait for the muse to find you.
That's a crucial question, because the point is not to wait passively. The point is to acknowledge the idea's independent life. An idea pays you a visit. It might try to wave you down for a moment, or it might orbit you for years, but it often fails.
Why does it fail?
Because the human is consumed by dramas, anxieties, distractions, insecurities, and duties. We're just too busy. We're too defended. If we're oblivious, the idea will eventually move on to someone else.
But sometimes our defenses slacken.
Rarely and magnificently, yes. Maybe we slow down, maybe we're more open. The idea senses this and starts its work.
And what does that visitation feel like?
It's physiological, it sends signals, chills up the arms, hair standing up on the back of your neck, a nervous stomach, or just an acute, persistent obsession with a topic. It might even organize coincidences importance to fall across your path.
It won't leave you alone.
Not until it has your fullest attention. And then, in a quiet moment, it asks, "Do you want to work with me?"
And that's the creative contract, the choice to say yes or no.
Exactly. And saying no isn't always dishonorable. Sometimes it's genuinely the wrong moment, or maybe the idea just knocked on the wrong door. You might politely suggest it go find someone else. All the idea wants is to be realized.
But if you say yes,
Oh.
it's showtime. You enter into a contract, and the sources detail two common models, starting with the most famous one.
The contract of suffering, the common Western model. I shall destroy myself and everyone around me to bring forth my inspiration.
The tormented artist.
Yes. The rules are surprisingly specific. You drink as much as possible, sabotage healthy relationships, express constant dissatisfaction, begrudge others' victories, and proclaim yourself cursed by your talents.
It's dramatic. It makes for a great biopic after you die, but
It's neither productive nor satisfying in life. The truth is, the muse, the sentient idea, is probably just sitting in a corner, patiently waiting for the guy to calm down and sober up so they can work.
so what's the alternative?
The contract of cooperation. Cooperating fully, humbly, and joyfully with inspiration. This means clearing out the internal obstacles, nourishing healthier relationships, and daring to be pleased sometimes with what you create.
And your worth is measured by your dedication, not by success or failure.
You see yourself as a partner to inspiration.
The story that really drives this home is the failure to write the novel Evelyn of the Amazon.
Oh, this is such a great story.
The whole idea was sparked by a true story about a Brazilian highway project in the 1960s where the Amazon jungle just rebelled and devoured the road.
We're talking bulldozers with tires as tall as a man being sucked into the earth and disappearing forever. That image is so powerful.
So the author agreed to the contract. She got a publishing deal, started studying Portuguese.
And the plot was so specific. A middle-aged Minnesota spinster named Evelyn, secretly in love with her married boss, is sent to the Amazon to recover missing money and the boss's shady son.
Her quiet life turned into chaos. But then life intervened.
Real-life upheaval. Complex immigration issues derailed the project, so she put it away for 2 years to write the memoir Committed.
And when she finally returned to the project,
The living heart of the novel was gone. The sentient force had vanished, swallowed like bulldozers in the jungle. The idea had grown tired of waiting, the contract was broken, and it just hit the road.
which emphasizes the vulnerability of this partnership. If inspiration can enter, it can exit.
The proper response isn't shame, it's efficient grieving and swift movement. You stay open for the next one.
And what makes this also credible is the sheer wizardry of the follow-up story with the novelist Ann Patchett.
Yes. They met, became friends, and started writing these long, thoughtful letters. And then Ann Patchett casually mentioned in a letter she was working on a new novel about the Amazon jungle.
So the author, still sensitive about her lost novel, asked Anne about the specifics over breakfast.
She summarized her ex-novel. It was about this middle-aged spinster from Minnesota who's been quietly in love with her married boss for many years. And all the rest of the plot.
And Ann Patchett's reaction.
Anne, a famously rational person, just stared back and replied, nearly word for word, that her new novel was exactly the same thing.
That is just jaw-dropping. It's not like two people decided to write a story about a vampire. This is a hyper-specific, unique premise.
They realized the timing aligned exactly with when the first author had lost the novel. They even joked that the idea might have been physically exchanged in the kiss they shared when they first met.
It has big magic in action.
And the analysis of this is crucial for you, the learner. Instead of destructive conclusions theft, self-blame, the healthy response was viewing it as a terrific little miracle. It introduced the scientific concept of multiple discovery.
Where two or more people independently arrive at the same idea, like calculus or oxygen.
Or the theory of evolution. Inspiration, the source suggests, is simply hedging its bets, working two channels at once to guarantee it gets made.
That's such a psychological relief. It removes the pressure of being the only one who can save this idea.
The Balinese concept frames this beautifully, defining the idea not as an individual product, but as a wrestling of the forest. It's an energy bigger than any one person.
So this redefines ownership. The idea is just looking for the swiftest conduit.
If you see someone else manifest your idea, it's because you didn't deliver. You didn't show up ready or fast enough.
So in the case of the Amazon novel, the original author concluded she had just been the foster mother.
Keeping the idea warm until it found its true and rightful collaborator. The novel wanted to be written, and it found the author who was ready right now.
Okay, moving from the magic back to the practical, we need to talk about permission, the need for external validation.
And the crucial step is realizing you do not need anyone's permission to live a creative life.
Right.
This mindset for the author came from growing up with these non-artistic but very pragmatic parents.
Engineer father and a nurse mother who had this powerful streak of self-assertion.
The father's hyper-anti-authoritarian instincts were legendary, like pitching a tent right on the beach where the sign explicitly said, "and no camping." A quiet declaration of self-governance.
And his famous suggestion box joke is perfect.
Oh, it's the best. Commanded in the Navy to install a suggestion box, he builds it, puts it on the wall, and drops the first note in.
And the note said,
"I suggest that you remove the suggestion box." A complete rejection of arbitrary authority.
And that attitude instilled this golden rule in the children.
If you're supporting yourself financially and not actively bothering anyone else, you are free to do whatever you want with your life. The author realized it never even occurred to her to ask a teacher or a publisher for permission to be a writer. She just started doing it.
And this leads to the core belief that you, the learner, need to absorb. You do not need anybody's permission to live a creative life.
It's our birthright. We are all descended from thousands of years of makers and tinkerers. Look at the evidence. Art is 40,000 years old. Agriculture is only 10,000. Early humans decided making attractive, superfluous items was more important than figuring out how to farm.
That urge to decorate is our inherent creativity. So if you're alive, you're a creative person.
We are all the chosen few. The gatekeepers who try to tell you otherwise are just wrong and annoying.
So the necessary ingredient to embrace this is cultivating a fierce sense of personal entitlement.
But we have to define that carefully. We are not talking about arrogance or behaving like a princess who thinks the world owes her something.
No. Creative entitlement simply means believing you are allowed to be here, and that just by being here, you are allowed to have a voice and a vision of your own.
The poet David Whyte calls this the arrogance of belonging. It's a vital, proactive tool for taking creative risks, for pushing yourself out of the suffocating insulation of personal safety.
It's the counter-argument to that nasty inner voice that says, "Who the hell do you think you are?"
The antidote is a simple declaration spoken aloud, "I am here," and then actively defining yourself, "I'm a writer, I'm an inventor, I'm a chef."
This also tackles the biggest fear around originality. I'm afraid it's already been done.
The response is so liberating. Yes, it probably has been done in some form, but it has not yet been done by you. Shakespeare covered every storyline, and that hasn't stopped 500 years of writers.
And even Picasso, when he saw the Lascaux cave painting, said, "We have learned nothing in 12,000 years.
Which is great. It means the goal isn't to invent something new, but to make the thing you were called to make, with your unique flaws and experiences.
And your creativity isn't required to save the world. It doesn't have to be important.
No, there's a warning against making helping other people your sole motive. People will feel the weight of that heavy intention.
So it's better to make art, to entertain or save yourself.
To relieve some psychic burden, to figure something out. The author wrote, "Eat, Pray, Love" to figure herself out. Helping others was just a magnificent side effect. It's okay if your work is fun or frivolous. Your own reasons are always enough.
Which links to the decorate yourself philosophy.
Inspired by a neighbor covered in tattoos, when asked how she could commit to permanent ink, the neighbor said, "My tattoos are permanent. It's just my body that's temporary."
And the urge to create comes from that. The desire to live the most vividly decorated temporary life possible.
If your time here is temporary, why waste it being small or safe? The philosophy is, hey, why not? Because it's all just temporary. That realization inspires immediate action.
And that takes us right into persistence. Because once you have permission and courage, you still have to show up, day after day.
This is where the seriousness of the lifelong vow comes in. The author made a very specific, almost religious vow to writing when she was 16.
She swore she would write forever, regardless of the result.
Regardless of success or publication. And the second part was crucial. She promised never to ask writing to be financially responsible, but always to support it herself, by any means necessary.
And she kept those vows through her 20s, writing every day. like practicing scales.
On bad days, she'd set a timer for 30 minutes and just scribble anything. This phase was all about imitation, learning by mirroring other writers before finding her own voice.
And the truth about this is so simple and generous.
Whatever you practice, you will improve at. Simple as that. Because she spent that dedicated time writing, she learned how to sit still and connect ideas to the page.
And that disciplined work taught her to recognize the emotional landscape of creativity.
Yes, persistence lets you see the psychological cycles that trick you into quitting. This is the part where I wish I'd never engaged with this idea. You learn to see that emotional dip as part of the process, not a sign to stop.
The Nobel laureate Seamus Heaney had that empty bucket analogy.
Perfect. For the aspiring poet, you are constantly lowering a bucket into a well and coming up with empty air. It's frustrating because you know the water is down there, but you have to keep doing it until the chain draws unexpectedly tight and you break the skin on the pool of yourself.
But persistence also means accepting the painful truth that every single pursuit comes with a cost.
Which brings us to Mark Manson's provocative but incredibly accurate concept. What's your favorite flavor of shit sandwich?
I love this. The shit sandwich is the inherent discomfort, the failure, the sacrifice that comes with any high-level pursuit.
Exactly. If you want to be a professional artist, but you aren't willing to see your work rejected hundreds of times, you're done before you start. Persistence means enduring that specific flavor of discomfort because the frustration and the failure are not interruptions of your process.
The frustration is the process.
That's it. The flavor for the struggling novelist might be the financial anxiety and constant rejection. For the mathematician, it's total isolation and pursuing false leads for years.
For the small business owner, it's the 80-hour work week and the constant fear of bankruptcy.
The willingness to consume that specific flavor of discomfort is the true measure of your devotion. The author said she loved writing so much, she would have even eaten somebody else's shit sandwich to do it. That's devotion.
Which leads directly to the pragmatic need for a day job.
Yes. She kept day jobs waitress, bartender, ranch hand, even after 3 successful books. She only quit after the success of the 4th, which was Eat, Pray, Love.
And the mandate here is crucial.
Never burden your creative work with the responsibility of paying your bills. Financial demands put immediate, unbearable pressure on the delicacies and vagaries of inspiration, and it just scares it away.
Yelling at your creativity to earn money is like yelling at a cat.
Perfect analogy. The cat has no idea what you're talking about, and you're just scaring it. Creativity doesn't work under duress.
So you have to reject those self-infantilizing fantasies. Marrying for money, winning the lottery.
Finding a studio wife to handle all your mundane concerns. No. You are in the world, not a womb. The better approach is to become your own patron. Work a day job so your creativity can play lightly. Toni Morrison worked at 5 a.m. before her publishing career.
And this self-reliance is driven home by the anecdote about the filmmaker who wrote to Werner Herzog complaining about how hard it is to make art.
And Herzog's blunt, unsparing response was the modern version of that tough mother.
What did he say?
Quit your complaining. It's not the world's fault that you wanted to be an artist. It's not the world's job to enjoy the films you make. Steal a camera if you must, but stop whining and get back to work.
That seems almost cruel.
But it's an attempt at liberation, a reminder that the world owes the artist nothing. Self-acceptance is the only path forward.
And the key trick here is the psychological shift. Stop complaining.
Because it's annoying, nobody listens, and most importantly, self-pity slams the door on inspiration. The subversive act is to dare to say aloud, even when you are failing, I enjoy my creativity.
Because inspiration will overhear that pleasure and loyalty.
And it will send more ideas as a reward for your enthusiasm, because it appreciates being enjoyed, not suffered over.
Which brings us to the final necessary ingredient, trust. Specifically, rejecting the Western addiction to creative suffering.
Right, rejecting the cult of suffering, the belief that anguish is the only truly authentic emotional experience for art. It was epitomized by that writing professor who told a student, unless you are emotionally uncomfortable while you are writing, you will never produce anything of value.
That is such a devastating belief for a learner to hear.
It caused the student, Katie, to delay writing a novel she thought would be cool and fun for years because she didn't trust her own pleasure. If it wasn't painful, it couldn't be valuable.
Which is a fundamental error.
A critical error. Creativity does not grow from pathology. It grows like sidewalk weeds out of the cracks between the pathologies. Raymond Carver was a success despite his alcoholism, not because of it.
So the idea that if my devils are to leave me, I'm afraid my angels will take flight is just an excuse.
An excuse for bad behavior. The tormented artist gets a pass from responsibility. The solution is to reject martyrdom and choose what to trust. Love over suffering, always.
And what's the core argument for this fierce trust?
It's rational. Why would creativity not love you? It came to you, asked for your devotion. It wants to be made manifest. It would prefer a long life of production over suicide or destruction, because when an artist dies, that creative channel is silenced forever.
So the helpful delusion to choose is?
The work wants to be made, and it wants to be made through you. If we have to live by delusions, choose one that is helpful and loving, not destructive.
And this brings us to the contrast between the energy of the martyr versus the trickster.
Martyr energy is dark, solemn, rigid. It says life is pain and the system is rigged. It ends up crushed.
Like Sir Thomas More.
Exactly. The trickster, however, is light, sly, transgressive. He says life is interesting and the world can be gamed. The trickster is Bugs Bunny. He finds a clever way around the obstacle and trots off to enjoy another day.
So how does the trickster apply this to creative problems?
Look at Brené Brown. She struggled to write about human connection while isolated in martyr mode. Her good trickster move was realizing that storytelling was natural for her. So she enlisted colleagues to take notes while she just told the stories aloud. It brought laughter, speed, and her authentic voice to a serious project.
Or the seduction trick. When blocked, you dress up in your finest clothes, put on perfume, and intend to seduce creativity back.
Dress for the novel you want to write. The goal is to stop acting like you've given up and remind yourself you're having a joyful affair with your creativity.
And this light touch also addresses the single greatest enemy, perfectionism.
Which is just high-end fear. Fear in fancy shoes and a mink coat, pretending to be elegant but actually just terrified. It stops people from finishing.
So the practical goal for you, the learner, is to become a deeply disciplined half-ass.
Done is better than good. It's pure pragmatism. A good enough novel finished now is always better than a perfect novel written never. Completion is a rare achievement.
The author even applied this to her massive historical novel, The Signature of All Things.
When readers pointed out an improbable character late in the process, she consciously let the imperfections stand. Fixing it would have required dismantling the entire finished book. She realized the novel was good enough, and the earth stayed on its axis.
So what should you do when failure hits? When the reviews are bad, or the idea moves on?
You forgive yourself, let it go, and immediately do something else.
Anything physical. A drawing class, baking a peach cobbler.
Painting pebbles. Any motion beats inertia. Inspiration is drawn to motion and enthusiasm.
Like the story of the writer Clive James.
After a crushing financial and critical failure of a play, he fell into a deep depression. He could only stare at the wall. Then his daughters asked him to paint their shabby bikes.
He started painting them red and silver, and then, completely consumed, he added hundreds of meticulously detailed star constellations.
He healed himself through that intensely detailed, frivolous effort until he was free to write again. He realized that failure has a function. It asks you whether you really want to go on making things.
Once he painted every star back into his personal cosmos, he was free.
Which leads to the fiercest question of all. The one that tests your deepest loyalty. What would you do even if you knew that you might very well fail?
Fierce trust knows the outcome cannot matter. You are worthy, regardless of the outcome. You keep making your work, regardless of the outcome. The act of making is the reward. So what does this all mean? We've reached the end, and the conclusion requires us to hold this powerful, necessary paradox.
Creativity is sacred, and it is not sacred. It matters enormously, and it doesn't matter at all. Art is a crushing chore and a wonderful privilege.
And the ultimate paradoxical truth you have to inhabit is this.
My creative expression must be the most important thing in the world to me if I am to live artistically. And it also must not matter at all if I am to live sanely.
Right.
You have to build space in your head for both of those to be true at the same time.
And then you go deep within that space.
Yeah.
You make absolutely whatever you want to make.
Let's close with the story of Little Brother, the aspiring painter. He was invited to this fabulous medieval-themed masquerade ball in a castle hosted by aristocrats, with crowned heads of Europe in attendance.
And Little Brother worked all week on this elaborate, audacious costume. He drove to the castle, walked into the magnificent ballroom, and immediately realized his catastrophic mistake.
The theme was a medieval court, and he was dressed head to toe as a magnificent, giant, bright red lobster.
Oh no. Gilded finery everywhere, and him in bright red spandex with huge foam claws.
He stood there, about to run away in crushing shame. But he realized his long experience as an artist of finishing the thing, of showing up, gave him the courage to be vulnerable. He realized, I made it. This is the best I have.
So he took a deep breath, adjusted his carapace, and walked onto the dance floor.
When asked by a distinguished gentleman what on earth he was, Little Brother bowed deeply, raised his foam claws, and announced with full confidence, I am the court lobster.
And the silence broke not into ridicule, but joy.
They loved his weirdness, his courage. He was the trickster among them, and he ended up dancing with the Queen of Belgium.
And the lesson for you, the learner, is this. You must stubbornly walk into that room, regardless of what you made. Never apologize for it. You did your best with what you knew in the time you were given.
You might end up dancing with royalty, or you might just end up dancing alone in the corner with your big red foam claws. That's fine too. What you absolutely must not do is turn around and walk out.
And that leads to the final, most liberating truth of all, the one that makes the courage possible.
Nobody is thinking about you. We spend our 20s and 30s agonizing over what others think, only to realize by our 60s and 70s that everyone else was just focused on their own dramas, their own shit sandwiches, their own fears.
This knowledge frees you to be stupendously imperfect.
You have treasures hidden within you. Go be whomever you want to be. Do whatever fascinates you. The invitation to the creative life stands.
And if you choose to stop creating because it's too difficult or unrewarding, you have free will.
But if you were to quit, what would you do instead? What could possibly take the place of that fascination, that love, that curiosity, that sense of partnership with the mysterious? If you find nothing, then you will have no choice but to persevere.